Can some people be too isolated to seek certain key truths told to them otherwise, and hence have to rely only on their own thinking, their own intuition, and start to question at times whether one is cuckoo, whether one is acting upon or thinking about things from a wishful perspective only. As per Napoleon Hill, who wrote he wrote Think and Grow Rich. He also wrote, though, How to Own Your Own Mind, and he talked in this second book of how easy it is for us to self-deceive each other, or ourselves rather, and cautioned against this. And so, is it easy for us to find ourselves questioning ourselves, doubting, if we are too isolated? How can we be too isolated? Maybe as a child, we had a different religious perspective than commonplace, or a different sexual perspective than commonplace as to how to interact, or maybe we weren't allowed to date, or maybe we were an immigrant, or maybe we were, quote, ugly, or, quote, frail, and didn't participate in sports, or our parents never encouraged sports, or just in general, we didn't fit in because we didn't have the fit-in type clothing, or hairstyling, or participation in certain activities in school in general, dancing, what have you. Another factor, maybe some people moved around so much as children, maybe even as adults, such that they never established themselves in a community and built up any long-term friendships that could communicate to them certain key truths. Or maybe the child was forbidden to go certain places, told they might get badly influenced by people who would teach them how to shoplift, or what have you. Stay away from the wrong side of the tracks, they might be told. There are even those who say, don't watch anything on YouTube, lest you get wrong information from certain people. And one man a few years ago telling me that when he went to his church, the pastor urged the people within not to watch anything, or read anything rather, on the internet. You might say that can go, though, to the extent of being so isolated that one either is sucked into a, quote, cult, or as a child one can't see the negative parts of one's upbringing by a certain parent. Some would call that abuse if continuing in the negative direction, and maybe a child can't understand this because they're so isolated or move around so much that they have no one to talk to find out any other perspective other than their own, and so they tend to believe whatever they're told, to include that their parents love them very much and do what they do in terms of sacrifices for the child strictly out of love. There being no contrary input. I'd finally add, under such circumstances, children might also be isolated if parents never talk about other people at the dinner table or what have you, to render comments about anyone else in general. This can even be problematic if one goes to, quote, brick and mortar therapy, and one never hears certain key truths mentioned. That then being a form of isolation, if that is only the only source one gets information from. Or again, if one only gets information from a church one goes to, especially if it is regarded by some as a, quote, cult. So I think a major reason said to some people why they should stay isolated or get only information from a certain one source, be it a parent or parents or a church or what have you, or excluding a lot of other sources, newspapers, YouTube, internet, is because some claim that you will get infected by certain viewpoints, or that you don't have the intellect to sort the whole cacophony of data out there, and you will be swayed in the wrong direction. You will be tempted too much, you will be conned too much, some say, and you will go down the wrong path of the, quote, straight and narrow. And it being best, you're told, to stay isolated to one viewpoint, and that one viewpoint is the best viewpoint. Sometimes said because that viewpoint has had more life experience by way of simply being older. So this is not an easy question to resolve then. How does one grow, and how does one see toxic elements in one's life if one is so isolated, and yet told that it's good to be isolated in the sense of being prevented from a whole host of negative influences that could stir you down the wrong path in life. You might say getting into the wrong crowd and, quote, ending up in prison and having to suffer a considerable degree from the school of hard knocks. Some would say, better to stay out of prison or these scuffs to the knees and stay isolated than to go through that. But my question is, in the long term, is that the best solution then? Some would say the end result, carried too far, could be the veritable drinking of the Kool-Aid that sends you like the flock of 900 with Jimmy Jones in South America to your death by cyanide drinking, or whatever happened with Heaven's Gate cult also. To be too excluded from outside influences of information can lead to, shall we say, a shortened lifespan. Seems to me it's not an easy situation to parse through, but these are my thoughts then. Many urging us to stick to isolated viewpoints and isolated bubbles of living, ostensibly to prevent us from going down the wrong paths in life that are painful to experience. But at what cost? Thoughts to consider, I think.